Mass protests are continuing to escalate in a Chinese village that has been sealed off by the authorities. Mobile phone footage has emerged of the protests in the village of Wukan in southern China. The protests were sparked in September by anger over village land that was sold to developers by the government. The rebellion has grown bigger over the last couple of days after a protest leader died in police custody. The Daily Telegraph correspondent Malcolm Moore managed to get into Wukan this afternoon. We spoke to him a short time ago by phone.
The police have encircled the village and they've cut off all food and water, hoping that they can bring the village back under control. This afternoon, the villagers were again in the main square, several thousand of them, punching the air with their fists and shouting slogans and basically vowing to continue the fight against the local government, even though they only have enough food left for about 10 more days.
Our international editor, Lindsay Hilsum, and former China correspondent is with us now. Lindsay, land protests are pretty common in China, but this is a little different?
Well, it seems to be different in the sense that the villagers have driven out the local Communist Party officials, and I've never heard of that before. It began in September when they came out and protested, and this was not unusual in that what they say is that the village officials have sold their land corruptly. And here you can see the police and how they treated the villagers for those protests. And what they did then was they tore down the local authority building and they drove the people out. But what has happened now is that the police have been coming in and arresting people. They arrested people at the weekend. They arrested one of the village leaders who's been leading the protests, and he died in police custody. And that is what has angered people so much at the moment.
Academics have talked of literally 185,000 protests last year. Do the Chinese fear an Arab Spring?
Yes, they do. And what they try and make sure always is that any kind of unrest like this is contained. That's one of the reasons that they've sealed off the village. But then they've got a choice now. They can either send in more riot police, they can use a heavy hand, or they can negotiate with the villagers. And in the past, they have sometimes negotiated and taken officials and put them in the party system for trials for corruption. And that may be one way to go, because what they absolutely don't want is a lot of media coverage of this and people in the rest of China thinking this is maybe something they might like to do.
The problem, of course, is that there is mobile phone footage. If we can get it, then it's presumably getting out all over China. So, and indeed, of course, you have Malcolm Moore getting in there for the Daily Telegraph. So it's a bit porous.
It is to some extent, but that mobile phone footage will not be easily viewable in China because of the censorship of the internet. And it'll be only people who've got proxy servers who are able to see it. The Chinese government will be spending a lot of time now making sure that nobody, or as few people as possible in the rest of China, know what's going on.
Lindsay Hilsum,